My story is going to be about communion, the meal that we share with our family, with our church, with the people we love and care about. As a pastor's son, I grew up in church. We would have communion once a month, much like this church. And my earliest memories are of feeling like there just wasn't something right. And we usually begin with a preface that you probably hear in most churches, and that's from the first letter to the Corinthians. Therefore, whoever eats the bread or drinks the cup of the Lord is in an unworthy manner, shall be guilty of the body and the blood of the Lord. But let a man examine himself, so let him eat of the bread and drink of the cup. For he who eats and drinks judgment to himself, if he does not judge the body rightly. What that meant to me as a PK, as a person sitting in church, and even at an early age, understanding that I was a little bit different. Out of context, without any real understanding, I immediately thought, there's something wrong with me, and it's impossible for me to receive the body and the blood of Christ, because I knew that I was going to be living in sin, that I had something different about me, an unrepentant homosexual. And I struggled with that, and I went through reparative therapy as a teenager and tried everything I could to change it. And then I decided to join the Marine Corps because I thought maybe they could straighten me out. And so I was stationed in Camp Pendleton, and on the weekends when I had the time, I'd take the train back down here. My parents lived in Madera, so I'd come and visit my parents. And when I was in the Marines, I developed a pretty regular drinking practice, and I drank to excess almost every night, anytime I could at least. And so that kind of carried over to my interactions with my friends when I would come home. And I thought, out of respect for my parents, out of an attempt to spend some time with them, the least I could do is go to church with them in the morning on Sunday before I got back on the train and headed back up to base. And so we went into my parents' church, the church I'd grown up in. My dad had since left the ministry, but they still attended. And we went in and saw everyone that I grew up seeing. Everyone welcomed us. And as we sat there and the elements began to be distributed, I was faced with the thought that, number one, I went out drinking last night. I don't think I'm really worthy to receive. And also, many of the people knew my past and my sexual preference, the fact that I had basically given up on my attempt to change myself, to be changed by God. And so I felt like I would be a disgrace, bring shame upon my family, to receive communion in the presence of these people when they knew what I was doing, who I was. And as the elements went past me, I didn't take them. And my dad turned to me, and he took his bread and he broke it in half. And he handed it to me and he said, "The Lord loves you and accepts you." And it was that little gesture. He invited me to receive communion with them. And if my dad can tell me that it's okay, that I can receive it, it was encouragement enough. I continued looking for God. I focused on my spiritual life, and I found a church that was willing to listen to me and allow me to attend without making me feel shame. And I grew, I got married, and now I'm living happily in this congregation. This is a story I told during our birthday dinner, which if you haven't had a chance to do yet, it's a great experience. Fellowship, getting to know people. I probably never would have been able to have a conversation with otherwise. But during that meeting, or during that dinner, I shared this story with the people who were there. And it was really an aha moment where I felt like things have come full circle. And in the back of your hymnal, number 888, as I was familiarizing myself with the music of this church, I borrowed a hymnal from Pastor Audrey, and I turned to the back, and I loved that there were prayers and scriptures and readings. And one really caught my eye, and I decided to memorize it. And Jesse helped me memorize it. He's not in here. He's putting some racks together right now. But it really is a good example of who this congregation is and what you're doing for people. The preface to communion is perfect for this congregation, and go ahead and follow along and read along if you'd like to. But friends in Christ, God knows our needs before we ask, and in our asking, prepares us to receive the gift of grace. We open our lives to God's healing presence, seeking peace with God and reconciliation with our neighbors. We are mindful not only of personal evil, but also of the communal sins of family, class, race, and nation. We confess to God whatever has wounded us or brought injury to others, that we may receive mercy and become for each other ministers of God's grace. Hear the good news. Who is in the position to condemn? Only Christ. And Christ died for us. Christ rose for us. Christ reigns in glory for us. Christ prays for us. Anyone who is in Christ is a new creation. The old life has gone, a new life has begun. Know that you are forgiven and be at peace.